Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast. I'm Joey Busuttil. And now that we're getting momentum in this podcast, it is really inspiring. I'm getting a lot of feedback from people saying how interesting it is to sneak into someone's life and to hear how they maintain their inspiration and their happiness in their life. The aim of this podcast is to show us that we don't need to have materialistic things to be happy, that everything that we want is actually living inside of ourselves. Now, on today's show, we're going to be speaking to someone from the US, and they're inspirational because they really work hard and dedicated to help people that are injured, athletes, the community, and help them to change their mindset and the way that they live their life. So on today's show, we're going to be speaking to Jennifer Schwartz. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. And, you know, how did you get into, what was your inspiration to get into helping the injured people rather than maybe going and helping able-bodied people?
Well, I had a lot of experience being injured as a competitive athlete. And I ran into the specialty that I'm in now, which is a small corner of the fitness and sports and performance world, which is called muscle activation techniques. It's a very unique view on the muscle system. And it also turns out it was the first thing that I came across that made sense.
Wow. Okay.
I was so inspired, mostly because I had spent some time playing football in different countries and realized that coming from the US, my identity was a little bit different. And that meant that when I was in the US growing up and playing competitive sports pretty much all the time, I just thought of myself as an athlete, and I didn't have I wasn't female, or I wasn't anything but just like someone who loved competition and being involved with other people on a team and expressing myself that way as well. And I didn't realize until I traveled a little bit that it was such a privilege. And when I came up injured a few times, I also realized that there was so much to teach people about physical confidence and being physically, just physically strong inside, like feeling it inside and expressing that. So I caught on to that early, and I've been an entrepreneur and business owner for over almost 15 years.
Wow.
So it was my first and only job was working for myself.
I mean, you must be noticing a lot of what you're saying about the Olympics being on, because it's interesting that you say that about the athletes. It's like they are identified with athletes, but they need to have something to push them. So let's start with the first question for you. Sure. And you can answer it from today or any time in your life, but how do you define fulfillment? How do you know when you're fulfilled?
Oh, I think it has to do with expressing your true self and being able to think about the journey of life in virtue and achieving virtue. So that is fulfillment to me.
Okay. And so when you look at the world at the moment, because, you know, the world at the moment is going through a lot of stuff, what do you feel is your connection to what the downside is to the world? You know, you come from a very positive space. You're very inspiring. But when we look out, we can sometimes see those dark shadows. And so what do you feel is the downside of what the world's going through at the moment?
Oh, the downside of what the world is going through. I think that we are in a very unique time. And first of all, being able to speak to you and give your audience, what'd you say, like a sneak into my life?
Yeah, peek.
I think, a peek. It's just such a privilege, you know. And I think the downside of all of this is that if we don't attract, again, like back to our virtue, like back to our highest good, if we don't attract those that are in that same frequency, then I think we could be in a really bad situation where we're I heard the term digital dementia the other day, and I was like, that's a downside.
Yeah.
And it's almost like nothing can, if you're in a space that digital dementia is grabbing your attention, I think that you don't have time to process things. Things are going to feel chaotic and what's the right word? Frenetic, and things are going to feel out of control. So I think that is the downside of living in today.
Yeah.
A lot of frenetic energy.
That's a good answer. And I guess, Australia and America are very similar in some ways, but I guess we're also going through very different things. So how do I love what you're saying about the energy and connecting with your sort of tribe and your values and virtue, but how do you cope with people out there that are not that? How do you not get caught up in that energy? Do you have a process, or do you tell yourself something? So, we see it on the news. We know that there's people that are anti this and anti that. What do you do so you don't get caught up in that?
Well, I have a very high regard for my own personal energy and my space. So that is, my what would we say? My etymonic, like my journey is to hold that space and make sure that if I do stumble into something that is making me respond negatively, that I have the flexibility to pull myself out of that.
Yeah.
And so at the heart of everything, and people that know me, they know that I have spent a lot of time on my own personal and spiritual development.
Yeah.
And I honor that. I think it's as a teacher and a healer I want to sell people on physical confidence and the belief that their body can change.
Yeah.
And
you're probably meeting some of those people in your business, but you have that gift to actually help them to change. Because, if you're dealing with the injured, because I had a disability, well, I still have, but I've gone through it. So I had my version of you in Australia, like that coach that helped me to get through it. And it is hard sometimes to go through those moments of darkness. But when you have someone who offers you light, you can actually see there's a way out. You know what I mean? And I think that's in some way, you're doing that in some way with some of your clients. I'm sure some of them aren't positive. Some of them would be a little bit,
sure.
Yeah.
And in dealing with them, I have to understand where because that is stressful and strain on me as well. So I don't pretend that I can solve all their problems, first of all.
Yeah.
And I can only do what's within my boundaries. And so, but with that quest, I will say, I have a podcast that has over 130 episodes that I can say, hey, that sounds like something I've discussed with this expert. Why don't you take a look at this?
Yeah.
And I have found the podcast and the creation of the podcast has helped me create more boundaries in which to operate with that person who might be triggering for me, or because at the heart of this, back to that inspiration, I work with the nervous system in such an intimate and spiritual way because I lost my mother at 20 years old to a neurological condition. So being able to restore neurological function and neuromuscular function with my clients is such a gift. And I think it has, and I've gone through a lot of battles with codependency and being a healer and trying to save everyone. So those boundaries to me help me, and they help the practice, and they help the client.
Yeah.
So
it's so funny. This is why I think the universe picks the right people, because I'm getting emotional. And when I get emotional, it just tells me that you are that there's an inspiration in you that's, yeah, anyway, it's an emotional feeling that I think that's what inspires people, because there's a purpose to what people are doing without like seeking the fame or the money, or, it's about the people. And that's what I love about doing this podcast. So, your own podcast, if you could sum it up in a statement or a few words, what would be the message that you want everyone to know that you're trying to pass on?
Well, the podcast is called Think Fit, Be Fit. And I think there is a beautiful, harmonious relationship that we can have with our body. And that if we think deeply and with health in mind about our exercise, that we can really achieve so much with our physical body.
Yeah.
So all conversations are around that.
Yeah. Don't you find it funny, right? Because I'm a therapist, and I don't know if you hear the same thing. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I can't do that, Jennifer. I can't do what you're saying. It's too hard." But then when you actually make them realize that what they're doing right now is way harder, you know what I mean? They have this moment. You know what I mean? Like, people don't either they don't stop, or they don't realize that they're going through a hard time right now, but they think that doing the work to change is hard. They don't realize that what they're doing is harder. Do you get many people that struggle, that struggle to have that awareness, to connect with their desire to be more happy? Or do you find that they want to be?
Not for my business in particular. We do have a physio on staff that specializes in that. So I really do refer to her very as soon as I can, if I sense that, because she's more into the biopsychosocial model of managing healthy lifestyle and pain. So with that said, every conversation about I can't see myself doing that, we always go back to self-selection and self-leadership. So I'm almost kind of rude in a way that I'm like, we're not here for that. We're here for,
No, that's good, because it's all done through mirroring, isn't it? Because if you buy into the story, then that means they're going to go, okay, she's believing me, let's stay there, and you stay there for a long time. So if you look at your whole life, right, what do you feel like there's anything that you would like to do over, or do you feel like where you are today, you're happy with everything that's happened?
I have a great appreciation for the things that I've been through. Even when I was in the middle of experiencing grief, a lot of grief, and dealing with the physiological effects of, post-traumatic stress disorders. And I still felt gratitude for being shown courage and bravery at an early age, because that's truly the message I got from, all sources during that time. So I don't know in that regard but I would, however, have had a more psychological approach to working with money as an entrepreneur. And when I worked with with psychology, with a counselor in regards to money, and learning the patterns that I learned from my parents and my grandparents, and just having to be on my own at 19, when I kind of learned that those cogs were ruling, how I operated, I think I'd go back and do that earlier and be like much more dedicated to that. So yeah.
And I always say that it should be a subject at school, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we do all this study on history and geography and maths, and then we go into the world and we have no idea. And you're right. If you don't have parents that know what to do, then that's all you know. And so, but in some way, I'm guessing that you learned how to do it, or you learned how to manage that as you grew. Is that what happened for you? Or do you feel like...
Yeah. I mean, I still am not like the best at it, but I've hired the right people. I want to say, like, I have a team now, and I'm really proud of being able to show my vulnerability to them. I
Yeah.
don't pretend that I know what they're talking about most of the time. I'm like, no, 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 back up. Like, please help me
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering what I said at the intro. Do you think, and this is just me talking out of the top of my head, do you think that that reason is aligned with the fact that you are not basing your life on money, but you get money, you need it, and you have it. But, and I think there's an abundance that you can ask for, so you're always looked after. But really, your true purpose and happiness in life doesn't come via money; it comes via your service.
My service to virtue,
Yeah,
and I think my service to recognizing that I have gifts and not hiding. I think if we hide, I think we're doing, and any gift, anywhere that you feel that you have something to share, if we're hiding it, I think that is
yeah,
a tragedy.
mm,
So I feel that part of my leadership and part of my showing up in general is to show that I'm spiritually bound to something that is in service, and that servitude is kind of an honor in a way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you realize that only 27, I think it's 27% of Western countries, only 27% of the populations live in virtue? Everyone else is
Yeah.
living in slavery, meaning that they all go to work because they want the money. Well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so this whole service thing, even though it's still tough, it is much better to, I mean, I personally feel like once I left corporate and I did what you're doing, working for myself, I could really feel the virtue rise up inside of me versus going to work 9 to 5 and doing all these things for someone else that I didn't even know, not getting paid
Yep.
properly, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So even when I started my business, I wasn't, I wasn't making a living. I had another job that I still enjoyed. But I knew at the end of the day, I had something to craft, and that I was putting my special journey and my special perspective into good work. And
Yeah.
so, I think,
Yeah, I love
wow.
that. No, that's exactly what I want people to hear. Is that
Yeah.
you're just an everyday person that was working, and then you had this flame or something niggling inside of you, and you were able to call yourself to action. Because really, the Eudaimonia Connection is really the hero's journey. I don't know if you've heard of Joseph Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so you're just describing your hero's journey, and I think everyone's got their hero's journey, but unfortunately, like I said, a big percentage of the population don't actually listen, and so they end up wanting that later in life when it's too late. Doesn't mean they can't
Mm.
get it, but yeah. So what do you think as humans? What do we all have in common? What are the things that you think we all have in common? If some people are not listening, or some people are anti this or anti that, is there a common element that you can see in everyone around you?
Cool. Well, one is that, if you rupture the skin, we are all very similar, 2 millimeters under.
Yeah,
Very, very thin. We all have very thin skin. How about that?
yeah.
Um,
We
and
all bleed, isn't it? Like there's no immunity to
yeah,
anything.
yeah. And I think on top of that, based on some of my academic work was with cadaver studying and dissection. And one of my biggest awakenings was with cadaver work.
Wow.
and it was seeing that we are energetic bodies,
Right.
because we are all the same underneath. And when you think about that in the context of pain and injury, and you look at this tissue and you're like, that is so strong. Because I mean, you can't ignore it because you're touching it.
Mm.
And seeing how everything is, grinded, like in there,
Yeah.
there's no empty space here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty packed in there, isn't it? And not that I want to ever see it, like, but it is pretty packed up.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's like nothing. The energetic body is the unique thing.
Yes.
And that's what I think we all have in common,
That's a good answer. I love it. Well, how do you do failure? Because you're so motivated and you're so inspirational. And then I think this is a very important question to ask people that are inspirational, because you remember, a lot of people will see you or listen to the answers that you've given and say, I can't do that. She's perfect. She's able to do, so it's important for us to demonstrate that there is probably places where you've not succeeded. And I guess it's interesting to know how you do that. How do you get through those situations?
Oh, well, I will say, if you want some lessons in failure, own a business, because it's a structure that teaches you so much about what you can do and what you can't do. So my if I could say, if there's a consistent failure in my life, it would be that I try too much. I do too much. I'm so perceptive that I want to take it all. And if anybody's into astrology out there, I have a cardinal grand cross so I have very strong cardinal energy, which is leadership, and I just want to do. And so I try a lot of things, and some of them take a while to fail, but I don't fear failure.
Yeah, you get on with it.
I just don't. Yeah, I just am like, okay, this is the structure that I've built for myself, and even if I fall flat on my face, I can still get up. And
the actual definition of success is someone that knows how to fail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think again, you summed it up, that you just don't fear itself. You just get on with it, right? So that means that because most people, like I was saying earlier, once they try something, now either they're going to go into their head and they're going to go, oh, I can't do that, so that's over already, or they try it and it doesn't work and they give up. And so, if you look at all the inspirational people in the world, like, look at Oprah or, these really famous people, all of them have got to where they've got to from failing. It's like, no, I don't think anyone has really just had a smooth ride. Maybe some people, but you know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be this thing where you reinvent yourself. So that for you, it's all about just getting up and doing it again and using that energy to be creative, isn't it?
Yeah. And I learned that through sports. I learned that through being in a family of business owners. That is so and I've had it modeled in front of me that the opportunity to have pressure on me, the opportunity to fail and be able to get back up is privileged for me. And so I don't fear it. I want the lessons, to be honest with you. I don't know. I just don't have the fear.
I'm gonna call you adaptable. You're adaptable. Okay, one last question. So what do you see? How do you define your future? And the future could be just tomorrow, or could be whatever you want to be. But where do because we're not there yet. We haven't experienced it. But for you, because you're very hands-on and you're very go, you have this energy that must obviously lead you there. So what do you see is coming for you?
Well, I have to I have to convince myself often that there's no destination. We're not going there. There's no there.
It's here, isn't it? Here.
It's here. Yeah. And I do have to tell myself that often. So I look at my future through the lens of astrology. I rely heavily on that. So I look at what are the gifts that I haven't discovered yet. What are the opportunities that are going to make me sparkle? And that often comes back down to that, that I think that core of the hero's journey. Am I living by the virtues? Am I checking the box of holding other people and myself accountable to them? Not that I'm an ethical kind of cop, but are my interactions, I don't want to say I'm holding other people accountable, are my interactions vis-a-vis like in virtue?
Yeah.
And so as long as I just remind myself that there is no amount of money that is going to make me happy, because that's a big one for me. I have to constantly remind myself that
Well, with the money thing, because I have that too in a way. You just got to just do what you're saying. Is that the here, right? Is all you've got now. Right now, with me, are you happy right now?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
so the here, and if I look back at all the days in my life, I'm going, oh my god, all those days that I was worried about money, it doesn't matter because I got through it. You know what I mean? I think when you get the big house or the car, which it'd be nice. Again, I think a lot of people would feel that that's going to give them something, but it doesn't always give you happiness because those things are fleeting. Those things will get old. So, so the future for you is about just being what you're doing now, but just doing it probably better, is it? Or stronger?
Yeah. So my mantra for that, my abundance mantra is money is a natural byproduct of sharing my gifts.
Beautiful.
And it's just something that is so activating for me. And it takes me out of the there into here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Like I really, I didn't know what to expect. I was going to get from you because the athlete part of it, but really, what I'm finding is that everyone has the same thread, and it's that virtue values thread that really is telling me that that's how inspiration is born. If you don't spend time connecting with that, you really have a much difficult time to. So thank you for sharing your evening, and I really look forward to sharing all your information, your podcast, your websites down to all the listeners. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for producing and hosting this podcast. I turned it on and I listened to the first 2 episodes and I was like, oh, I love this. So I was totally vibing right away, and that I'm so glad that it's out there.
Thank you. Well, everyone's going to be vibing over you in the next few weeks now.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the EUDAIMONIA Connection podcast. This is Joey Busuttil. Now, the podcast is out every Wednesday. Now, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you make sure that we tell you about all the up and coming episodes. Make sure you go out and get your virtues today, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.